Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, a safe space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson, an adoptive mom of a 19-year-old son, Joey, who's in recovery from addiction and who's struggling to find his path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. We are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. Today's guest is Kevin Burgart from the Nashville area. He's an adoptee, adoptive parent of 2 children with significant special needs, and recently he became the adoptive parent of his grandchild as well. Since Kevin has been on both sides of this equation, he has a unique perspective on adoption. His life has been more challenging than most in many ways. We will dig into the obstacles he's faced and talk about what resources he's found to help him cope. So welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Kevin. I'm glad you're willing to share your story here to help other people. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Adoption's complexities. That seems pretty apt for your life, yeah?
Yeah, I would say so. It has been pretty much the driving force of my life on and off since 7 years of age.
Yeah. So when were you adopted and you were 7 when you found out?
I was born in 1954 in a hospital for unwed mothers in Rock Island, Illinois. And within 24 hours of my birth, I was taken to an adoption agency in Peoria, Illinois, which is over 100 miles away. Mm-hmm. Back in those days, I was 24 hours old being driven to an orphanage.
Wow.
And I was there for approximately 2 months before my adoption by my family. And the first 7 years of my life were pretty uneventful, just a kid growing up. And then my parents announced one time that they wanted to adopt a daughter and were working on that adoption. And that's when they told me that I was adopted as well and that it was a perfectly natural thing.
Wow. What do you remember about being 7 and hearing that? Is it like a memory that's just sealed into your core or is it kind of vague or?
It's vague.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have strong recognition of it other than the fact that it did alter my life. Mm-hmm. It altered my way of thinking. It altered how I felt of family. Mm-hmm. Of course, I was excited about getting my sister, but I knew it was going to change my life at a young age. And it was a theme that was reoccurring from that point forward. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a troubled kid. I didn't get into a lot of trouble, although it did affect me. Mm-hmm. And it was really bothering me in my early teen years.
Mm. How did it affect you? How did that present itself?
Well, it affected me in my teen years because that whole thought process had been accumulating in me through those years. And by the time I was 13 or 14, it was affecting me pretty strongly. And my parents were concerned about me and they tried sending me to a private school in a different state, and that didn't work. I was home within 6 weeks.
Oh, boy. Were you having behavior issues or what was concerning them?
Well, I was having emotional and behavioral issues, and this was late 60s, early 70s, so there was also the cultural issues going on.
Oh.
And by the time I was 15, my birth mother wanted to help me and perhaps get a little understanding. So mm-hmm. she wrote to the orphanage or the social service place mm-hmm. and got non-identifying information. Mm-hmm. It was about 1.5 pages long, and it was mostly accurate, but as I've learned through the years and the decades of research that it wasn't entirely accurate, and I think that is fairly common with adoptees.
I've heard that so many times. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. What I believe happened was the biological grandmother gave the storyline to the agency.
Okay. To save face or something like that?
Yeah. My birth mother was 15 when she gave birth to me. It was around the time she turned 15 when she got pregnant with me on a military mm-hmm. base in Illinois. And the birth father was a 23-year-old. He was a rather troubled man. He had a lot of affairs. Mm. He was brilliant in that he could pick up languages, pick up musical instruments and play them proficiently enough to be in bands. Mm. But he was also a womanizer and a terrible alcoholic.
Oh, boy. Wow.
My birth mother was raised in a very dysfunctional home, a lot of problems within that home. She was an Army brat. They moved from base to base, even in different countries.
So your birth mother didn't have a stable upbringing at all?
No. And her mother was also rather loose. and had many affairs behind the back of whatever husband she was married to at the time. And all the kids in the house grew up watching that parade in and out.
Wow.
So very unstable. Anyway, I was blocked for 41 years by the legal system of learning who I was due to closed adoption laws in the state of Illinois. And there are many closed adoption laws throughout many states in the country.
Yep.
And once that law changed, I was able to learn my birth mother and her name from the adoption agency. And I looked for further contact and had no contact, didn't discover anything, did get the original birth certificate. I guess I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and say that it was years later after that discovery that I actually learned about biofamily through DNA testing.
Okay, because the government didn't help you. The records were all sealed. So that's how you found your people was DNA?
The records were sealed, but the records were changed around 94, somewhere in there. I began my search 48 years ago, and I was 15 with the help of my mother, like I discussed. She felt I should know as much about my biological mother as possible, and she contacted the agency, and we got that non-identifying information.
It seems like that is unusual for, especially in that era, for the adoptive mom to be so on board with trying to find your birth parents. Do you feel like your adoptive mom was really helpful to you in that? And
yes.
Was she kind of on board with this whole thing? Or?
She was definitely on board with that. She knew that I was hurting.
Yeah.
And she wanted to try to bring relief to me and closure.
Nice.
And
that's good. Okay.
The only thing that we really learned, we learned she was a young Catholic girl, which wasn't actually true.
Oh, really?
And that she was in the church choir with my birth father, which wasn't actually true.
Oh, man.
And that he wanted to marry her, but the grandmother, her mom, said she was too young and refused to let that happen, which wasn't actually true because he did not even know she was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And never knew.
So the whole thing was fabricated on your records.
Yeah, that was all a fabrication from the charitable services. So, kind of in and out with it until around 1991. And I've always had a void feelings that kind of go with this. Kind of felt like a life sentence in a way for me because I didn't know and I didn't have an identity. And yes, I had loving parents and a good family, and they raised me to the best of their abilities, which was very good. So that wasn't an issue. I know it is with some people who are adopted.
Yeah, that happens a lot of times where there's abusive adoptive parents. But I'm glad that you had good adoptive parents. That helps a little.
Yeah, and that helps explain my mom wanting to help me so that I could get closure into my life. In 1991, I finally contacted the Social Service Agency again for any other further information they might have had from that original letter. And it was pretty much the same letter. There was a few other clues in it, nothing of consequence, and pretty much the same falsehoods. I was given that non-identifying information. I was told that my birth father was looking for me, but he couldn't reach out to me unless the birth mother gave him permission.
Oh my gosh.
Well, this was 1991. He died in 1979. So that was a falsehood. That was not true.
Gosh, that's so terrible. It's bad enough that you're needing to go find your own past and then to just run into so much falsehood. That just must have been so frustrating.
There are a lot of falsehoods that are thrown in the way of an adoptee who's searching. Yeah. So adoptees, beware.
Yeah. Don't just believe the first thing you hear. Yeah.
Take it all with a grain of salt and keep digging. Don't accept what you're told. You need to be able to sieve through it all and figure out what is true through backing facts with facts.
Yeah. Detective work. Wow.
Yeah. So moving on a little bit, back in 94, then I again reconnected with the agency to see if any sign of anybody had shown up to leave a message or anything. And with the help of my wife, then we registered me with a database with Mormon Church of Latter-day Saints. They have a huge adoption registry.
Mormons are interested in ancestry. That's for sure.
Extremely. So, all that created a cycle of roller coaster emotion for me.
I bet.
But it was kind of like, hurry up and wait. There'd be a thaw and then a freeze. And it's like, roll fast and then nothing. So
that must be so destabilizing. And you're trying to work and have a life while you're doing this. It's not like your full-time job trying to find your, right?
no,
It's like trying to do this on top of just life.
right. Life happens while you're busy searching for your adoption family.
Yeah. On top of everything. Okay.
So on and off, I kind of touched base with that. And then in 2007, we had learned that the laws had changed to semi-closed adoption in the state of Illinois.
Okay.
And that's when I petitioned the court and got the birth certificate and learned my bio mom's name. So I really jumped ahead earlier in this.
Okay, no worries.
But that's when it happened. And for the first time, I had a name and something really tangible.
That must have felt good.
It was exciting. It had been 47, 48 years since my search began when I was 15 with my bio mom. And when I learned all this, my mom had passed, so she never knew.
So you were not able to meet either of your parents? By the time you figured it out, they were already gone?
Oh, yeah. And my mom never knew either because she had passed away. Both my parents had passed away. So I didn't have any parents on either side. It was in 2014, I learned my bio mom's name was Patience, and it shattered me.
Tell me why.
Well, just that tangible thing was powerful.
Oh, just learning her name in general?
Yeah.
Or did it have to do with what her name was?
Well, learning her name.
It just strikes me because you had needed so much patience in this whole process. And then her name is Patience.
Like, her name was Patience. But in 2014, we had learned that she died in Florida, and she's buried in Florida. She died in 1990. So she's buried, as it turned out. She was 51 years old when she passed, and it was cancer that had metastasized and put her in a grave.
So did you find other family members? You finally were able to search, and then you came up with parents who had already passed, which must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's kind of a cold case because once I'd found her, and the truth of it is, through all these years of searching, while, of course, I thought about, well, I probably have siblings somewhere, that wasn't the focus. The biological father was not the focus. It was learning my mother. That was always my focus. So once we learned that she'd passed away, and of course we applied and got her death certificate, so I have that on file.
Okay.
It went cold again. It's like, well, where do I go from here? How do I find anybody? She's passed away. And I looked, but I didn't ever find anything in the newspaper about her passing, her eulogy or anything. So when I took that DNA test, 23andMe and then Ancestry, my wife had built a small family tree on Ancestry with her name on it and my name on it and my contact information.
Okay.
We found her resting place in Florida through findagrave.com.
Okay, yeah.
And so I put my contact information there as well. But again, the search faded from my life with no further contact coming forward until 2017, which was the big reveal.
Okay, what happened in 2017?
Well, I was in Tucson, Arizona at the Gem and Mineral Show there. I vend and sell rocks there. And I got a phone call one morning and I was about to open. And on the other end of it was a True Blood nephew. And he had seen the small family tree on Ancestry and was curious about me. So he called me and I was floored.
Yeah. So this was your first person you've ever spoken to that's related to you?
That's correct.
Wow.
And
that must have been amazing.
I was opening for a show that day and I had to pass on my information and let him talk with my wife because I just couldn't do both.
Yeah. I bet you were distracted that day.
I was a wreck.
I bet. Oh my gosh.
But he told me that I had 2 living aunts. I had 2 living sisters, multiple cousins. So that was with me.
That's amazing. Did you connect with some of those relatives then?
I did. It was after I'd gotten back from the Tucson show. It was in March when an aunt contacted me by phone. So I was talking to her and she was very interested to know more about me. And she told me the nephew had provided the proof with a copy of my birth certificate my wife had sent to him.
Okay.
So that we knew we were actually who we said we were.
Right. I bet people sometimes get wary of people like, are you just trying to get money or what's your intentions here? Is that what they were kind of worried about?
Sure. You never know.
They're strangers, right?
Right.
You have no idea who these people are.
Exactly. Yeah. And that does happen because I'm still on Ancestry and Ancestry more so than 23andMe. But I read people's stories and on Facebook, there's a DNA groups that I'm part of. And you read people's stories about how people try to muscle in
Oh,
when they
gosh.
aren't really relatives, or they are really relatives, but they just want money,
Ugh.
kind of thing. Anyway, she opened up about the family and to some degree, and there was a lot to learn. She gave me the edited brief version of a dysfunctional family history.
Mm,
It
mm,
was disturbing.
mm.
The manipulative grandmother whose lies, secrets, infidelities, shunnings, and rejections that ruled the family.
Mm.
The two uncles, one molested the girls, one molested the boys in the family.
Oof.
All of them,
Oh, that's horrible.
including my sisters,
Oh.
is horrible. It really kind of burst my bubble of what I'd imagined about biofamily.
Hmm.
It was a lot to take in, and it was really shocking to me.
Yeah. I bet as an adoptee, you kind of fantasize what your parents would be like. Like maybe they're superstars, or maybe they're like business people and wealthy. Maybe they're super warm and cuddly. I'm sure your fantasies are not like the horrible version, they're the best version. And then you
Mm.
find out the reality is like not like that. That must have been just very hard.
Yeah, and a lot of that was I learned about when I read The Primal Wound.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot of that, like most adoptees go through, where you fantasize
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And of course, I did when I was a kid. Now, as the decades rolled by, not so much, but when I was younger and
Sure.
impressionable, what made that impression that lasted throughout my whole adoption discovery
Hmm.
process, that was always laying in the background. That just
Yeah.
was. So my aunt went right into, "You are so lucky you escaped this mess." And
Oh.
but part of that, she was working me, and she, my aunt herself, was working on manipulating me,
Oh, how so?
further manipulation.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
when it came time for me to try to discover who the bio father was, she didn't want me to do it. She insisted that I
Oh.
call her the matriarch of the family, though she wasn't, because I actually
What?
had an older great aunt who would be the true matriarch.
Wow.
But this woman is very manipulative, and she wanted to learn about me. And, in a way, she was kind of an emotional vampire. And
Wow.
I haven't had any contact with her over 4 years,
Wow.
just too emotional.
I bet she sounds very disruptive. Ugh.
Mm.
Now, I hear that adoptive people hear from other people all over the place, you're so lucky. You're in a much better place than you would have been. How does that land? And like, it's sort of true. It's sort of true in your case. And so, but it still probably doesn't feel good. Like, can you go into how that landed with you when you found out all that stuff?
Right. Well, when I first got in contact with a sister who was 18 months younger than myself,
Hmm.
we went through this discovery phase once she accepted me,
Okay.
and we began to talk. And we kind of went through this discovery phase where we would tell each other stories of our childhood
Hmm.
and relate stories. And I was, even though the aunt was chipping away on this thing she was doing to me,
Hmm.
I was still, kind of a fantasy as far as what it would have been like to grow up with my sister.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Did she have a good life? Did she have
No,
a good
no,
adoptive parents?
no,
No. Oh
no. She wasn't
gosh.
adopted.
Oh, she stayed.
She stayed. She was
Oh,
raised by our
oh.
bio mother, and
Okay. Oh boy.
our bio mother had a very unhappy life.
Wow. So therefore your sister did. Wow.
Oh yeah, my bio mother would move frequently, just
Hmm.
pack up and move. My sister would tell me, she said, I'd come home from school and the car would be packed and running, and she'd say, "Get in, we're leaving." And that
Oh
happened many, many
gosh.
times.
Oh my gosh.
In the course of all that, my sister and I discovered we had crossed paths in the same community at the same time
No way.
many times.
Gosh.
We crossed paths when I visited my grandparents out in California. She was the same community I was passing through with my grandparents
Wow.
in Indiana, where I grew up. She lived 40 miles for a time from where I grew
Wow.
up in Florida. The first time I was 4 years old, and my parents took me to Florida to visit my grandparents down there, and that's where she was.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Well, my birth mother had 5 kids. I was the oldest.
Okay. And you were the only one that was adopted?
I was the only one adopted. There were 3 that lived, the 2 that did not. My brother from my bio mom, unfortunately, was a very troubled person and took his life in 2013, so I didn't get to meet him.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
It's part of the family history on both sides, actually. But so I have a total of 15 siblings.
Wow.
On my father's side, I had 8.
Wow.
I had 9. Sorry, I had 5 on my mother's side, and then my sister that I grew up with. So
okay, wow.
But yeah, I learned about my father's side in July of 2017, just, a few months after the maternal side.
Okay.
And I got into contact with one brother and 2 sisters almost immediately.
Okay.
And one of the sisters and I are actually still very close. And her and her husband are coming for a visit in April for 8 days. So looking forward to that. But I'd met her before, and she and I look an awful lot alike.
Nice. But with some of the other siblings, it's been a little fraught.
Some of the siblings were hesitant to meet me, though. They've all come around. I have 5 living siblings on my paternal side and 2 siblings living on my maternal side. So, and then my sister. So that's my numbers. So I went from having a sister to having a lot.
Yeah, boy, that's a big shift for sure.
It was.
That must be kind of difficult to juggle all of that.
Right.
All those new relationships and okay, so that could be just a whole episode on its own, just your wild adoption story.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't stop there because you decided to adopt, and you specifically decided to adopt children with special needs. So tell me how that came about.
Well, I was in my early 40s. My wife was in her late 30s. We could potentially still have children, but through some health reasons, it wasn't really going to happen. And we wanted to start a family. And we felt that adopting older, emotional, special needs children was probably something that we could be pretty good at because I had my adoption story. She helped me learn of my family.
Okay. So your wife was really supportive through that whole thing?
Right. But of course, at that time, we didn't know my family.
Okay.
She was being supportive of the search.
Okay. I see.
And she grew up in a rather dysfunctional household, too.
Okay.
It wasn't a pleasant household. But
so you both felt like with your backgrounds that you had a lot to offer another child with emotional special needs you were focusing on, right?
Yeah. Well, our local newspaper was publishing a series of articles of older special needs kids that were up for adoption, and they were pushing it, and it was through the state of Tennessee. So we applied for it, and we were eventually taken into the class. They had a class that lasted almost 8 months worth or so, and then we had to send our fingerprints off to Washington to make sure we weren't criminals. And then they would give us a rather thick book of kids that were needing adoption and a brief description of them. So we went through all of that to get our kids. While we were going through that, there was a whole series of books out about adopting older emotional need children, which we read every single one of them, highlighted them.
It sounds like you did your due diligence for sure.
We did our due diligence, and we studied in our class, and we graduated. And so we were eventually placed with 2 sisters. There was a total of 3 siblings from a very dysfunctional home. And we were placed with 2 sisters, a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. There was a 3rd sibling, a boy. He was in an adoptive situation with another family. They had adopted him, and they were waiting for the court to finalize that adoption. So we knew about him, but we didn't have any contact with him. Unfortunately, it wasn't all that long before things started happening with the 2 sisters. The older sister did not want to be adopted by us, and she started acting out. The younger sister, the 7-year-old, was perfectly happy with us, and we were getting along quite well. But the older one that was acting out was doing things that eventually led to the fact the caseworker and the state decided it was not in the best interest or health of either sister to be placed together. They
separated the 2.
Right. And we, of course, had to go through another round of approval from the state. And we were then allowed to adopt the 7-year-old, our daughter.
Okay.
The older one went on to another home, and we'd hoped to have all 3 kids stay in contact with each other.
Okay.
My wife proposed doing what they'd call a family day, where once a year, maybe twice a year, we'd go someplace neutral, like a park or someplace, and have all 3 kids get together for the day so that they could stay in contact. And that was important to us. Well, the family that adopted the older sister flatly did not want to do that, did not want any contact.
Aww.
So we began visits, having weekends with her brother over.
Okay.
So the first weekend went fairly well. And then a month or 2 later, he was over for the second weekend. And again, it went fairly well. And my wife took him back on our way to work. And the caseworker was there to pick him up, take him home. And my wife got a call about 45 minutes later saying, "We have a bit of a problem. Do you think you could keep the boy if I bring him back? Because his family has moved and left no forwarding address or information."
Oh my gosh. So over the weekend while he was visiting you, the family just
They moved.
left.
The family left.
What the heck? That is crazy.
Family abandoned them.
Whoa. So an adoptive family abandoned. Oh my God. Ugh,
so we were stunned. And of course we said, "Sure, we'll take him."
Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah,
of course.
As a sibling of your other daughter, and
Right.
What are you going to do?
So we eventually adopted him as well. So we had a daughter and a son, half siblings. He, on the other hand, was a lot more of a handful than she was. He had a lot more emotional problems that we went through with him.
Were you his second placement?
We were number 2 for adoptive family. We were number 4 in his timeline.
Okay, so he had foster families and other things happening.
He had 1 foster family. He was removed from the home at 18 months, severe neglect, malnourished. The bio mother would go out and party for the weekend and leave at the time, the 6-year-old in charge of the other 2.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. She took him to a party 10 days after he was born, and he got a 3rd-degree sunburn because she just neglected him. Wasn't good.
Yeah, poor guy. How did that turn out? How did that go?
Well, he was a problem child. We worked with him. We had him in weekly therapy and family therapy to work with him. And as he got older, things did not de-escalate. They escalated. And eventually, through the years, we had to place him in 3 residential treatment centers. We had to put chimes on all the doors in the house as he became an adolescent. He was very abusive of the animals. He had fantasies about his sister. It was not fun raising him.
Sounds very stressful.
We tried to maintain a normal as possible house with our daughter and our son. But we didn't try to let the son's behavior change the way we were raising our daughter. Although in hindsight, that was kind of, a little Pollyanna of us.
So were they both in regular school and stuff when he wasn't in residential treatment centers, but they were in regular school and did the things?
We were both through school. They both graduated high school locally. With him, we had to have an IEP in the 504s. We had a showdown with the school system at one time. With him in particular, of course, he was in therapy. There were various therapeutic drugs that he was on, and some worked and some was like adding gasoline to the fire.
I bet. Yeah.
We personally were reluctant to use medications, but took the advice of the professionals, and thus we did.
Yeah. Did he have diagnoses that you were working with? Or?
He is schizotypic. We had a 10-page diagnosis from Vanderbilt University that did a study on him, which helped with the IEP and the 504s. While he was in elementary school, there was a lot of untrained school personnel, and we found them extremely difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
They were not sympathetic. They were very confrontational in a way, or subtly.
Not trauma-informed, it sounds like.
Not at all. For instance, at one point, he was acting out, and they isolated him in a janitor's closet, shut the door.
Oh, my gosh.
With one bare light bulb on. And they had some monitor outside the door. So that was their excuse. Well, we had a monitor outside the door.
Oh, my gosh. This is an elementary school. That's so horrible. Oh, my gosh.
So, it was bad. We had to get the Tennessee Justice Department involved. Principal was in collusion with the parent who was trying to get a petition signed to remove our son from school. She's going to take it to the school board and put his name publicly out there in a school board that would be in the minutes.
No way.
No way. We had to stop that.
Oh my gosh. Because it's public school. You can't,
Right.
Every child needs to be able to be educated. That's horrible. And did your son's behavior escalate when he became an adolescent in high school? What did things look like there?
Well, some of his behaviors included he'd do destructive things, he'd break things, steal things, he'd tear things up, and just basically disruptive within the family. He had incontinence issues, something they called mad peeing. He would tear holes in the mattress he'd sleep on, and he would urinate in the mattress until it was saturated.
Oh my gosh.
He would urinate down the heat and air conditioning registers.
Oh my gosh.
It was not a pleasant time.
Wow.
He had fantasy thinking, and he still does to this day. He thought he could run 90 miles an hour, and he could climb 3-story buildings, and he could shapeshift into a werewolf.
Wow.
He was extremely fantasy-minded. He fabricated stories. Therapists called it grandiose thinking, where he told wild stories and lies and accepted them and swore they were true. That evolved into his teenage years, and when the hormones hit, it got worse. He got into a lot of trouble in high school.
Oof, so much.
Well, he had a friend who she convinced him her boyfriend was treating her bad, and she broke it off from him, and he was harassing her. So our son ground a shank and metalworking, went home with her on the bus, and they had a plan laid out to kill him.
Oh my gosh.
We found the notes passed between each other of the plan. So it's something that we knew was not a fantasy. It was a reality.
Wow. Did it get thwarted somehow?
Yeah, her father called us up and said, "You need to get your son. He's over here with my daughter and he doesn't belong here." So we went over and picked him up.
That's really terrifying.
Yeah. It got worse as he got older. He would steal credit cards. He stole his mom's company-issued cell phone and would use it to ring up porn sites in the middle of the night. The one thing about him was, as far as we knew, he was not into drugs or alcohol. He didn't really need them.
That's good. Yeah, he had enough. Okay, wow. Now, where is he now? And how old is he, and what happened,
Yeah, he's 28 now. He's currently living somewhere in New Orleans with a vampire clan.
Wow.
Supposedly has a girlfriend pregnant.
Oh, no.
He bounces between jobs. He thinks himself a security guard. He insists that he was in the military and that he was a major in special forces, which is all untrue. He washed out of boot camp in 3 weeks back in the day.
Wow.
After he left here at 18, he left on his own with the help of actually an encouragement from the last therapist he had and a friend's mother who helped him and encouraged him. He left and he was hanging out for a while with friends till he wore out his welcome. The couch surfing was over. And,
you can do that for a while.
Yeah. And then he ended up homeless and on the streets and committed several crimes. He spent time in jail. Couple different occasions. We still occasionally get calls from somebody looking for him, a bill collector of some kind.
Wow. Have you talked to him lately, or is there any connection with him? Or
my wife talks with him occasionally. I do not. Okay. I have not talked with him since his 24th birthday. The final straw really for me was he was very angry just before he was 18, and he's quite a bit larger than I am, and he threatened me in our home, and it basically has given me PTSD ever since. I just can't deal with it.
Wow. Gosh, that's so serious. Wow. Now, you're raising your grandchild. Is it your son's child or your daughter's child?
It's our son's. Yeah.
Okay. So your son had a child.
Yeah. He had a child with a girl who was 17. She turned 18 when she gave birth, but she was 17 when she was pregnant. And they met in a homeless camp in Nashville area.
An ideal situation. Okay.
Lovely.
Oh, poor things.
Fortunately, her father put her in a girls' home. So she wasn't on the streets, and she wasn't with bad influences, and she wasn't able to get drugs, which she is a drug user. So the grandson was born a healthy baby. And my wife was there hours within the birth to meet the grandson. And it was 6 weeks later after his birth, we got a call from the state of Tennessee asking if we could take care of him because they were taking him out of the home. He was in ICU and had been for 3 days, giving him fluids and basically keeping him alive because he was shutting down.
What? So he was born healthy. What happened?
He was born healthy. When we got him, he was a preemie, 6 weeks old. He regressed. They didn't feed him.
So malnourished.
They give him a bottle of juice a day. And
juice. Oh, geez.
I mean, they give him things he wasn't supposed to have. They were getting therapy and counseling. Did no good. They were just taking the money and using it for whatever.
Oh, geez. Oh, gosh. So 6 weeks, and you said yes because it's your grandson and you're a good person.
Well,
and you said yes. And so was there a part of you that's like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Well, to be honest with you, I was perfectly fine letting him go into foster care because I was reaching the retirement age, and it's like, what am I going to do with a kid at this age? I've got plans. I have a life.
Start all over.
But my wife said, no, that's not going to happen. So we kept him, and she convinced me that this was the right thing and the best thing to do for him. And I was on board with that. So it's all good.
And how old is the boy now?
He's going to be 5 in April.
Aw. Is he delightful?
Oh, yeah, he is. He's delightful. He's fun. This is the age where you have to correct every other sentence, it seems.
Oh, boy.
He's trying to push buttons right now. It's that age.
That's her job.
That's his job. And our job is to say no.
Wow.
But yeah, he's a good kid. We get him involved in a lot of things. He loves camping. He loves our pets. We got a puppy that's now about 7 months old. So he's helping raise this puppy, and he's really good. It's fun.
I think it's amazing that after all that you've been through, that you guys are taking care of this grandchild and just loving him and just trying to give him a chance at life, right? And putting your retirement on hold and just starting all over. Are you getting support you need, or?
Well, we don't really have any support. The state just kind of left them, said, well, we had to go through juvenile court, and several court appearances for the bio mom to get him back, which she didn't show up at any of them. Court finally ruled that he was going to not live with her because she wasn't responsible enough. And
not showing up?
Well, she's 22 now, and she has 4 kids, him being the first, and all of them have been taken by the state. So
man.
I know. It's not a success story.
There's so much. Oh my gosh. Just so much pain just multiplied. And it just keeps going and going, huh?
It does. On the positive side.
Yes. How do you manage all this?
We raised the bar for these children, our 2 children, because we really don't think they would have had much of a chance had they just kept bouncing in the foster care system.
Absolutely.
We think they probably would have, both of them, made catastrophic decisions instead of just bad decisions. We gave them a normal, balanced family life. We showed them things. We took them places. We got them involved in sports through the years, both through the school and outside of the school. We were big campers. We took them all over camping, different places, to the beach, to the mountains, to the state park 60 miles away on the lake, stuff like that. So all I can tell you is you just got to do your best with them. Give them every possible purchase on a normal life. And, what they end up doing with it is what they end up doing with it. We just felt that we supported them and always had their best interest in mind and wanted to teach them through example and teach them through experiences to be the best potential family for them, to give them the resources to potentially rise up from the ashes of this really rough start in life. My wife is a prime example of that. She had a very rough upbringing. She was severely abused by her father. She had all kinds of problems in her home, and yet she was able to rise above it and be the phoenix from the ashes.
Nice.
If you want to hear some resources, we have resources we'd love to share with you.
Yeah, what resources have helped you along the way? I'd love to hear that.
Well, for me, of course, I read The Primal Wound and Coming Home to Self, which is both very good books.
Both by Nancy Verrier, yes.
And Journey of the Adopted Self.
Betty Jean Lifton.
Of course, when I was going through my time of learning about my bio family, I was heavily into several adoptee reunion support groups and Facebook.
Yes.
I no longer participate in those, but I do recommend them for people in my situation. And of course, Haley Radke's Adoptees On is excellent.
That's an amazing podcast. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll link all of these in the notes, by the way.
In one of the closed groups for adoptees on Facebook, I ran into a woman that shares a lot of the same scenario as I have, and we became friends. Okay. And she lives near St. Louis, and her husband and her son have come through Nashville, and we've all met together. And she's helped me. She was in Florida, and she placed flowers on my bio mother's grave one time when she was down there for me. And it's been a very good experience. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you can learn from some of these groups and really get the kind of help that you personally need.
Yeah. Reach out. There's so many groups out there. And there are groups for adoptees in reunion, all different brands. I'll list a few in the notes. I have a group for adoptive parents, if any of you are adoptive parents that need help. And there's so many groups. There's groups for everybody. Even your son, he found a group of his people, right? The vampire group. I had no idea there was such a thing. But, there's groups for everybody. So find your group that is going to support you in what you need. Is there any other bit of advice or anything else that you would like to share before we close up?
Actually, I would like to bring up some advice as far as anybody that may be going through something like what I went through as far as discovering my biological family. You need to make sure you take care of your husband or wife or significant other while you go through this discovery process, because it is extremely emotional and it will knock you off your pier if you're not careful. It is such a strong wave. It will just totally wreck you, sometimes with depression, sometimes with elation, to the point where you don't know who you are anymore. And that sort of happened to me, and I had to learn.
I bet.
You need to take care of yourself and your loved ones and your family when you are first getting to know your biological family. You need to invest in them and share with them and keep it very open. If you need to get counseling, be careful, though. Most therapists that are out there for adoption counseling are going to be for adopting a baby and not older family reunion. Most of them are that way, or adoptee reunion. That also is a very specialized type of counseling. And though they may say, well, we specialize in adoptions, they're not talking about that. They're not. So you got to be careful. Just keep in mind that the core family is the core, and you got to stick with them, because once this rush of emotion is receded a little bit, you have to make sure that you're still in harmony with your family.
Definitely. That's your people that you need to stick with. Well, you and your wife sound amazing.
Thank you.
Give my love to your wife. And just the amount of dedication you have to your family through these kids that are so troubled and so much heartbreak, and that you're taking care of your grandchild and you're open to all of this with your own adoption. Just, my heart really just goes out to you, Kevin. And
thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing all this. I know that your sharing your story might help someone else open up a little bit to their own story, or have more compassion for someone that's adopted or that's adopting, maybe somebody that's adopting an older child. Maybe the community can come around parents like you that are struggling with your kids, and their kids are struggling, and we all can just have more compassion and more understanding. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think that we would probably do this all over again. And I don't think there's much we could do different that would change any of the outcome. And I think it's purely subjective outcome. Not everybody's going to have the kind of experience we had with our kids. I think a lot of people I know have relief. Their kids have relief from it, and they go on with their life. And, there's always that. So our story is perhaps different than a lot of stories.
Yeah. Your story is pretty intense.
Well, we would do it all again.
Yeah. Well, you're a really good person, Kevin. I admire you so much, and I'm glad to know you.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that.
If people want to get in touch with you, are you open to that? And if so, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, if people would like to get in touch with me, I think that would be fine. I'm on Facebook. I'm open to the public. I don't have a closed Facebook page.
Okay. And I'll link the Facebook page on the show notes, so look down below there. Please share this episode with anyone you know that might benefit from hearing Kevin's story. Please find us on social media. Our website is unravelingadoption.com. And we do have a group for adoptive parents called APtitude, a support group for adoptive parents facing adoptions challenges. So if you're an adoptive parent, come on and join us. Find us on our website there. And we do have Patreon too. So if you're interested in supporting our show to keep it commercial free, I invite you to contribute a small amount every month through Patreon, patreon.com/Unraveling Adoption. So thanks again, Kevin, for being here and sharing your story. I appreciate the emotional energy it took to do this. And I just appreciate you sharing your story to help other people. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And Kevin and I want you all to stay safe.